For you games. Yeah. Today doing an unboxing on Mage Noir. And this will be the first video to drop with the nice Folio Games playmat, courtesy of my boy called Initial J, aka Team Cryptic Core. One word on YouTube. Covers Battle Spirit Saga. Got some videos up, check them out. But anyway, Mage Noir. Check this guy out. Okay, read the back of the box. Mage Noir. Discover the secret world of the circle and learn magic. The highest form of science and the key to infinite power. Use mana, energy in its purest form, to harness the elements and ascend to an almighty Mage Noir, the most powerful beings to ever exist. Mage Noir is a dueling strategic card game that brings innovative mechanics to the genre. Shared mana pool. Spent energy is available to both players, accelerating gameplay. Ooh. Spellcrafting system. Use simpler spells as components to craft stronger ones. Ooh. The Mage Noir status. It grants you immense power, but that comes at a cost. Deck building freedom. Make your deck your way with very few creative restrictions. Easy to learn, hard to master. Simple core rules, yet a ton of interactions to discover. Will you become the next Mage Noir? Game designers Vincent Vimont and Constantine Dedayan. I think they're French cats. And illustrators, 204 spell cards, 144 mana cards, 80 tokens, 2 20-sided dice, rules. Yep, this is the Kickstarter. 2-player, 15 to 30 minutes. Man, it's pretty fast games, if it's accurate. Alright, ton la música, uno minuto. Right. Handy Daddy Soul. Yeah, I did this Kickstarter not when the campaign was up, but after it was done. But late pledge worked just fine. Didn't even really saw this thing a while ago, just backed not long ago though, months ago, and it's actually out. Even though I kind of hate, like, you know, some people that get their backings like way before me for some reason. So people have been doing unboxings of this from like 3 weeks ago. I mean, at least. I don't get it. There goes my code. Blur out my code. Freaking. I redeem this code to... Yeah, and you can play this thing in real time, like online. So, that's pretty cool. Alright, Mage Noir. Rulebook. First game sheet. This sheet will guide you through a few scripted turns of Mage Noir. You will be playing as the element air during this game. Follow these instructions in parallel with the first game sheet. Fire that your opponent uses. You and your opponent will start with 20 HP. And you achieve victory if you reduce ops total HP to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of the quick start. First game. Okay, you get the air and then the opponent gets the fire. Tokens. Guessing this is active and this is inactive or something. The soul, the forge. Alright, big stack of cards. Okay, so I got this with I think I got just the base. I think there was a purple faction I didn't back and another color faction, I think. Alright, they all got a regular little circle back to the cards, and take it these are the mana cards. Yeah. Oh man, maybe it just comes with it or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it comes with 5 base maybe and 2 extras. I don't know. 2 D20s with the custom 0, I guess. Custom 20 right there. And are they spin down? Not spin down. Yep, not spin down. Alright. What to open first? Guess I'll open one just for the opening and then do the flipping through the cards later. Yeah, so to reiterate, the cool thing about this, the innovative thing, is like you have a shared mana pool, and I think it's a I cut, you choose mechanic. So if you want some mana, you can get that mana, but then it's like you give the opponent double the mana or something like that. Starting off with the grass. Pretty sure that's ramp. It's always ramp, but maybe not in this game. Alright. Okay. Nope. Green in here. Fire in here. Wind in here. And some purple in here. Alright. King of Trees. Tree times 1. 5 trees. A nice Tarmogoyf looking type deal. Some kind of elemental. It's permanent, unique. You can control only one copy of this card. At the beginning of your turn, inflicts 2 damage to the opponent for every tree in play. If you're a Mage Noir, your other trees apply their effects one more time. Nice. Yeah, the question is, how do you become a Mage Noir? 2 of those. Tree in Flames. Tree times flame. So it looks like the cards are named after the elements. Okay, permanent. If you're a Mage Noir, preparing this spell requires 1 less component. Sure, mana cost. CMC. At the beginning of your turn, this permanent inflicts 2 damage to the opponent, then loses 1 health point. I'm taking it, that's the health points. 2 of those. Hostile Forest. 3 trees. Trees times 3. 3 trees and 1 darkness. Permanent, at the beginning of your turn, inflicts X damage to any target where X is the current health points of this permanent. Protector, you may redirect damage the opponent controls onto this permanent. It's got a 10 health. Yeah, so that's why, because it's a defender protector. 2 of those. Ephemeral Brambles. Seed times 1. Okay. 2 plant cost looks like. And the opponent chooses 1 option. They discard 1 card in hand or they lose 3 HP. 2 of those. Druid Ring. 3 plant, 1 whatever. Equipment Ring. Damage inflicted by vegetal permanents you control is increased by 2. If you're a Mage Noir, when you add mana to the available ether, then at the beginning of your turn, add 1 additional vegetal mana. Alright, so that's vegetal. Vitamita vegetal. Vitamita vegetal. Classic Lucy. Alright, Druid times 2. Yeah, I mean, what that times 2 means and everything, I don't know yet. Vegetal and then whatever, mystical purple. Kelox's robe. Okay, equipment torso. Cool, it has different places for the equipment. Damage from vegetal spells you control, permanents included, increased by 3. Nice. And inflicted damage you take is reduced by 2. At any time, you may sacrifice this equipment and discard your hand to prevent all damage you would take until the end of the turn. Nice. 1 of those. Mental Flame. 2 of those. While channeled as a component at the start of your turn, pay 1 fire mana or discard this spell. Pay 1 fire mana or discard this spell. Okay, some kind of component. I guess it adds to stuff. Oh, while channeled as a component. So maybe you tap this to make it a mana. Seems like, I don't know. Rain of Flames, a fire type card. 4 fire, 1 water, whatever. And then that can only be prepared by a Mage Noir. And then inflicts 5 damage distributed as you choose between 1 to 5 targets. Cool. 2 of those. Wave of Flames. Flame times 1. probably just knock all these out and then go through the rule book. But you know, at this point, I'm gonna flip through the rule book a little bit, and then might pick that up later or at the end of this. Our rule book right here. Right, Mage Noir rule book. Master the elements. When playing Mage Noir, you can grow plants in an instant, raise towering waves from still seas, harness the might of the wind, and invoke the destructive force of fire. You are a mage, a member of a secret society that has existed in our world through the ages. You'll learn to combine spells to master the elements and unleash them on your foes. What is Mage Noir? Mage Noir is a strategy card game. Each card represents a spell manifesting diverse effects, summoning a magical item, or performing a ritual to gain new powers. As a mage, you choose your spells beforehand and cast them during the game, sometimes by channeling minor ones as components. Okay, so sounds like you tap minor spells to make them mana, ramping up to incredibly powerful effects. But casting spells isn't free. You will need to use mana, the omnipotent energy of the world, to fuel your powers. In a duel to the death, use your cards wisely to ensure you come out on top. Alright, inventory. This box contains the following components: 2 20-sided dice to track players' HP, 80 tokens, 144 mana cards, 24 air, 24 arcane, 24 fire, 24 mineral, 24 vegetable, and 24 water. Okay, 200 playing cards, spells, 50 air, 50 fire, 50 vegetal, 50 water. Okay, yeah, so if I would have bought the add-on content, that would have gave me 50 mineral and 50 arcane spells as well. Okay, something to pick up later if the game's great, which it assuredly is. Victory conditions in Mage Noir: knock your op down to 20, from 20 to 0 HP. Additionally, if a player has drawn a card but does not have, if they get milled, they lose. Okay, advice: focus on damage. If you're a beginner, we suggest you focus on dealing to 0 HP. Game setup: Mage Noir is a deck building game. Your victories will be determined both by the cards you decide to use in your deck and the way you play them facing your opponent. You can create your own personalized deck to play with by following the rules on page 16. However, for your first game, we suggest this crap. Display the infinite ether. Put the 6 piles of mana cards somewhere you and your opponent can access them. These represent the infinite ether. Each player shuffles their deck and places it on either side of the table. Also prepare an empty space next to each deck in its discard pile Choose your starting hand. In order to choose your starting hand, make 2 piles of 5 cards drawn from the top of your deck. You may observe the contents of each pile, but can't swap between the two. Choose the pile you would like to start the game with, and you use this as your starting hand. Return the other pile to your deck and shuffle it. Okay, cool milling mechanic. Cool mulligan mechanic right there. I like that. That is pretty innovative. Determine the first player. Leave it in the comments if you've ever seen a mulligan like that in a game. I certainly haven't. Okay, determine the first player. For the first game, choose one player randomly through a coin roll, whatever, dice roll. For subsequent games, the player who lost the previous game decides. Alright, so I guess it's best 2 out of 3 type of deal. A general rule, overview of a turn. In Mage Noir, players take turns to gather resources and cast spells. Okay, turn start, draw phase, mana gathering phase, main phase, and a turn. The main rules: cards are stronger than the rules. Simultaneously effects. Same time, it's up to the player whose turn it is to choose the order in which they resolve. Okay, that's the stack. Leaving the board: when the card leaves the board in Mage Noir, it releases all of the mana locked underneath it to the available ether. That's the shared mana pool, it sounds like. Yeah, this happens regardless of where the card goes or how it's removed. The controller of the card puts the mana back while respecting the usual rules regarding releasing mana to the available ether. See page 7. Discard and destroy. In Mage Noir, discard means to put it into its owner's discard pile. For permanents and equipment in play, this effect is referred to as destroy. Discard and destroy. Okay, target validity. When an effect occurs but doesn't have a valid target anymore, nothing happens. But any effects that should follow will still trigger. When an effect occurs but doesn't have a valid target anymore, nothing happens, but any effects that should follow will still trigger. Okay. Turn start. If some of your cards have play effects that are said to happen at the beginning of the turn, they happen now. Draw phase. You take the top card of the deck and put it in your hand. Exception: first player, first turn. Skips the draw step. Mana gathering phase. The first thing to do during the mana gathering phase is to choose 3 mana of any elements in the infinite ether to put them into the available ether. Alright, the first thing to do during the mana gathering phase is to choose 3 mana of any elements in the infinite ether to put them into the available ether. So you take 3 of the infinite and then you put it in the available. For more info on how available ether works, check the panel to the right side of this page. Yeah, the available ether. During the game, you'll frequently have to add mana to the available ether. This happens when a card leaves the board at the beginning of your mana gathering phase and when effects require you to pay mana. The available ether is always displayed as 2 piles. Even when a pile is empty, it's still counted as if it was there. When you add mana to the available ether, add it to one by one, alternating between one pile and the other. Always start by adding mana to the smaller of the 2 mana piles. If one pile is empty, it's logically the smaller pile. Also note that the controller of the card chooses how to allocate the mana between the 2 piles. For instance, if your opponent discards one of your cards, you choose how to allocate the mana of the discarded card since you were the one controlling it. Cool. Draw mana. Once you've added 3 mana to the available ether, take all of the mana contained in one of the 2 piles. You may choose either pile. The mana is added to the mana reserve until you choose to use it. This means that you keep all unused mana between turns. Okay, mana reserve, cool. Okay, what is mana? Mana is magical energy used to cast spells that exist in abundance all around us. By fighting your opponent and using magic, you're slowly drawing the surrounding mana to your conflicts. All of this drawing mana is called available ether. Alright, frequent questions about adding mana. What if both piles have the same amount of mana? Then you start putting your mana in either of the 2 piles. When adding 3 mana each turn during the mana gathering phase, does it have to be 3 of the same element? No. If I want to add a mix of elements, do I have to add them in a specific order? No. In game, the available ether is displayed as 2 piles of mana, varying in size in the center of the board. Mana can be claimed and used by each player. Lack of mana cards. You may sometimes run out of cards of a specific mana type in the infinite ether. The ether being infinite by definition, we recommend using other items or cards as mana. You know, magic mana. We tried to fit an infinite number of cards into the game box, but unfortunately couldn't. We hope you will accept our apologies for this inconvenience. The print and play version of Mage Noir on the official website contains a printable mana file that you may use to extend your ether towards infinity. Yeah, I downloaded that a while. Good thing I didn't print it. Okay, main phase. This is when you... Okay, 18 minutes. I'm going to try to... Rule book really ain't that long, so I might just go through the whole book. Or pick it up later, I don't know. Main phase. This is when you can play your cards, manage them, and activate them in any way you want to. You may perform as many actions as you want, as long as you have the necessary resources to do so. Okay, prepare a spell. In order to use the cards in your hand, you'll need to prepare them first. Preparing a card means putting the card on the board in front of you with the mana cards corresponding to its mana cost placed underneath it. This mana must come from your mana reserve. A card's mana cost is displayed in the number and element cards engraved in the left corner. For example, you'll need 1 vegetal and 1 water underneath this card to prepare it. Once the card is prepared, you may either activate it, channel it as a component, or keep it prepared on the board, in which case you're delaying your choice to a later moment. Cool. Prepare spell. Okay, activate a spell. Once your card is prepared, you may activate it simply by saying you do so. Once you activate it, the following chain of events occurs. You apply the effects of the spell as stated on the card. Then the card goes on top of your discard pile. Then finally, you release the mana underneath the card to the available ether. The effects of the spell can be read on the card right below the drawing. For instance, when you activate the card above, you may take up to 2 air mana from the available ether and add it to your main, to your mana reserve, right there. All right, channel a spell as a component. The other option you have with a prepared spell is to channel it as a component. To do, tap it, and then just basically an elf right there, and channel is an elf, mana dork. From now on, this spell can't be activated or returned to a prepared state. However, it now counts as a valid component to cast stronger spells. Some spells require you to control a specific components to be prepared. This requisite can be seen towards the top left of the card in its mana cost. For instance, this card also requires that you control at least 1 wind component. Okay, so when it says like that, written out, wind times 1, you've got to have that many mana dorks as components. Okay, when preparing a card with the component cost, simply verify if you have the necessary number of valid components on the board. Their prior use by other spells during the game isn't relevant. Components are a prerequisite, not a cost. As such, they stay on the board when a spell that requires them is prepared or activated. In other words, a single component can be used to cast several different spells that require it. Okay, trading mana. During the game, you may end up with some mana that you have no use for. You may trade unwanted mana with the available ether following these rules. You may trade any 2 mana from your reserve for 1 mana from available ether. You may only trade with the larger of the 2 mana piles. Okay, you got to trade with the mana piles, not with the infinite ether. Okay, the name rule. Any channeled card counts as a component for each word in its title. For instance, both of the following cards count as a breath component. However, the left one will also count as a flame component. Breath, flames, okay. Do note that you may trade any combination of mana, not necessarily 2 mana of the same element, as long as you give 2 mana from your mana reserve. Likewise, you may trade for any element of mana within the larger of the 2 mana piles. Once you can or don't want to perform any more actions during your main phase, your turn ends. And effects you control that happen at the end of your turn take effect now. Then, if at this point of your turn you have more than 7 cards in hand, discard till where you have 7 or less. You keep all the mana you have in your mana reserve. Okay, the elements: air, water, fire, vegetal, mineral, arcane. The different types of cards. Most of the cards are meant for single use. When you activate them, they apply their effects, go to your discard pile, and release their locked mana back into the available ether. But some have specific keywords that change how they function. They are easy to recognize. They are the first thing written in the card's effects, using permanents and equipment as components. Both cards are constantly considered valid components while they're still applying their effects. They can't be channeled, thus they are not turned 90 degrees like other components. For instance, the keywords permanent and equipment detailed next are common and have the important impact on how these spells function. Permanents are not discarded when you put them into play. These cards are considered to be prepared and don't need to be activated in order to apply their effects. Considered prepared and don't need to be activated in order to apply their effects. Once you put them on the board, their effects apply immediately as they are written on the card. The mana used to put a permanent into play stays under the spell as long as the permanent is on the board. Some permanents have a number on the bottom right that says HP, and it falls to 0 is discarded. Any permanent with HP may gain HP through other effects. There's no limit to the amount of HP. Yeah. Alright, equipment, like permanents, equipment is not discarded when you put it into play. It doesn't require to be activated. Each type of equipment represents a slot, a space it occupies on the player's board. For instance, on the torso, head and back, as well as weapons can be held and rings can be worn. It is only possible to have one of each type of equipment equipped at one time. When the with the exception of rings. When you play equipment of a type you already have, only the most recent equipment stays and the previous equipment type is discarded. Using equipment as a component for another equipment spell is treated as the component being forged into new gear. Thus, the equipment requires other equipment as components. Those components are discarded after the newly played equipment enters play. Rites and rituals. These are powerful spells required to become a Mage Noir, which is a special status explained later. Once prepared, rituals can't be destroyed or removed from the board. Just like permanent equipment, they apply their effects constantly as soon as they're put into play. The mana used to cast them will stay underneath them for the rest of the game. Furthermore, many of them will grant you special abilities you may activate any number of times during your turn. You may have several active rites or rituals in play and benefit from their different abilities. Each element has its own rite and rituals cards that allows you to become a Mage Noir, for instance. Okay, you become the Mage Noir with this rite of passage for 2 arcane. Alright, additionally, most rituals will give you powerful abilities, granting you new strength in exchange for a sacrifice. Becoming a Mage Noir signifies important growth in your magical power. You will see the effects of the new status directly on your cards. Many spells possess new options or enhance abilities for those who manage to complete a ritual. Some cards are even unusable only if you're a Mage Noir. However, note that becoming a Mage Noir is not an obligation. Even though the status comes with a lot of advantages, it's totally possible to win the game without playing a single ritual. Deck building. Rules. A deck is a pack of cards representing all of the spells you know when starting a confrontation. Creating your own deck is very simple. You just have to choose your cards following these 2 rules. At least 40 cards, no more than 4 copies. Aside from these, there's no other rules in deck building. Okay, tips. Even though you can put as many different elements, stick with 1 or 2. Make sure you have the necessary components to cast each of the spells. Make sure your deck has enough damage dealing spells to defeat your opponent. To balance their cost and power, we advise including 2 to 4 rituals per deck. Try to stick to 40 cards, as will give you the best chance of drawing the right ones. Yeah. Alright, pre-con decks. Whirling Flurry, Crushing Pressure, Burning Wrath. It seems to be all flame. It seems to be all air. It's all water. It's all seed. It's all plant. Surging Growth, Burning Wrath. Rule clarifications, instantaneous effects. Some cards can act anytime, meaning you can trigger right before your opponent's actions, even if it's not your turn. If both players want to perform this, the player whose turn it is has the preferential treatment. Excess damage, when a spell inflicts excess damage, trample. Inflicted damage versus loss of HP. Reducing versus subtracting. Glossary, activate, apply the effects of a spell discarded and add it to the mana in the available ether. And available ether, mana present in the middle of the board. All cards in play, channeled. Any spell turned 90 degrees and put on its side of the board is considered channeled, which makes it a valid component. Okay, channeled, make it a component, mana dork, 90 degrees. Deck, yeah, destroy, discard. Okay, discard pile, a pile of spell cards that were where used, discarded, and destroyed cards go. Players may not change the order of the discard piles, much like Keyforge. Okay, infinite ether in the middle, locked mana that is locked under a spell on the board. Mana, prepare, put a spell on the board with the necessary mana underneath. Protector, release, take mana under a spell and put it into available ether. Transmutable spell effect keyword. A transmutable spell is considered as having an additional term in its name. Unique, one of them on the board. All right, less than 30 minutes. Go to them socials. And for your games, like, comment, subscribe. I'll be doing a flipping through the cards with the rest of this and I guess the rest of these card stacks. And it turns out that these are the pre-cons. So yeah, all right, under 30 minutes. Like, comment, subscribe for your games. Yeah.